Welcome to another episode of an intimate conversation with women of color. Today's throwback is for LGBTQ plus History Month. It's a recording with Michelle Elizabeth Brown and I during Pride Month of last year. So since October is also LGBTQ plus History Month, I decided to dig into my bag and pull out this episode. I am your host, Deneen L. Garrett. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And please continue to do so. Share and subscribe. Let's reach those millions of women of color together. Michelle, hi. Welcome to an intimate conversation with women of color.
Well, hi, Deneen. It's good to be here.
Yes, I so appreciate you taking the time. We were scheduled to do this in September. I reached out and asked if we can move you to June to kick off Pride. And, based on, recent events, your activism is really timely to have this particular conversation. So again, thank you.
Well, it's like I said, I'm always happy to be available for these kind of conversations, which I think are very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to introduce you to our listeners, so Michelle E. Brown, who uses the pronouns she, her, hers, is a public speaker, author, activist, radio host of Collections by Michelle Brown, blog, radio. Michelle, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, I am a native Detroiter. I often get a joke out of that because many people talk about, where'd your family come from? And I said, well, my mother was born in Detroit. So I'm from Detroit, from the east side. I have been active on many levels since I was in my teens. And I often say, this is why I like this show. I've always been influenced by the strong women of color, primarily Black women around me, that have made it clear that, as they like to say now, don't just have to talk about it, you have to be about it. And that has been me most of my life.
Yes, absolutely. I love that. Be about it. Mm-hmm. And that is so definitely needed, and why we need to have spaces where we are comfortable with, sharing our truths, with encouraging other women, and then just standing up for them. So, as I mentioned, I asked for you to help kick off Pride, and unfortunately, George Floyd was recently murdered, and he was just one in a long list of others. I mean, so many to name. Unfortunately, if something isn't done, he's just added to the list, and then there's more that will be added to that list. And Pride actually is a result of rioting, unrest by women of color. Marsha P. Johnson, a transgender Black woman, Sylvia Rivera, a Latina transgender woman, they both stood up and they fought back. So we are in, similar times, police brutality, the response to that. So, of course, it's important for us to have a platform. So why specifically is it important for women of color, activists, to have a platform?
Yeah, it's important for women of color to have a platform because the reality is we have been doing it. It was women of color who have helped the African American community, even through slavery, that helped our families make it, kept families together, raised our young. Our Latina sisters during the migration who have fought for rights. Women of color have been doing it, but often because of stereotypes or what society wants to say, if we try to speak up, people go like, oh, well, there are angry Black women. Sometimes even before you get an opportunity to speak up. But we have been doing it. We have been building bonds. We have been building communities. We have been caring for communities forever. And now, more than ever, I really believe that the answer is going to come not only from communities of color, but from women, specifically from Black and brown women.
Absolutely. I definitely agree with that. And what I have seen is just the last few days, women have been speaking up more, even in corporate America. I've heard conversations to whereas, often we just kind of lean back and just, listen to the conversations and, here and there we might pipe in, but for the most part, we don't. Because of what you said, because of, oh, if she says something, oh, she's angry, before she even says something, oh, we just know, she's going to say something. Um, Out of frustration or out of anger. But I'm starting to see women, as you said, we're, like, what, if we don't say anything now, when is there the time to say something, right? So we're being more courageous and we're using our voices. And once we jump out there, then, okay, it's done. We've
Mm-hmm.
done it, and everything is still standing. So, we continue to do it.
And
So,
the flip side of it is either we're angry or the other one, we're uppity.
uh,
You know, so we're not supposed to be angry, but we're not supposed to be smart. And we are all of those. In fact, we have
we are all of
righteous indignation and we're smart.
absolutely, we're educated, and that's part of it as well. What we bring, the whole package, and they just don't want to see us, and so we do have to do things to be seen. So other than you said that you've been act- an activist since you were a teen. How are you using your voice for women of color?
Well, I use my voice in many ways. First of all, as a woman of color. And because you recognize that there are little black and brown girls who need to see someone who is going to speak up and know you're not angry, you're not uppity, but I can express my anger and move it towards justice. You can be intelligent and doing it. But I also use it as a way to, I have been invited to things. And I think that because they say, oh, well, we have to have somebody black on the panel. And to be able to not only go in there and use it as a way to open it, but then to talk about the broad range of issues that I'm concerned about, the intersectionality that is part of our everyday lives. And that's what I do. I do it sometimes through public speaking. I do it through poetry. I do it through writing, ways that also where I don't always have to be the one who is a big gush of air coming into the room and sometimes sucking the energy out, but I can be that refreshing breeze that allows and nourishes others to share their experiences and thus
Yeah.
move us all forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And, storytelling, right? That's real big. And that's a
Mm-hmm.
conversation that, I had a couple different calls today coming from different perspectives, and storytelling was mentioned, and it's very powerful. It's strong, as far as a medium of communication. Share a little bit more about storytelling.
Well, yeah, I think I come from a family of storytellers, and and you didn't really recognize it, but I think that storytelling comes not often from myself, but it's from listening to these stories, and often, particularly when I am the only person or there are diverse groups. When you start to tell a story, you can often draw upon experiences that other people relate to, not directly, but they can relate to it. And we often say if we dig deeper, we find that we all have a lot more in common than we do differently. We are all human. And so, I mean, I often tell people about one time I was talking about being a single teen mother and moments of despair and loneliness. And I had a white woman who came up who talked about during, I forget which war, and her husband was away. And here, basically, she had to face all of those. But some of the things that I touched upon, we were able to connect with and then have a conversation. And those conversations led to action.
Absolutely. I love that. Conversations leading to action. And that's definitely what's needed. And that's definitely what I'm seeing, for people to say, okay, let me hear from you. Let me hear what you have to say. So, first, opening that up. And then when they listen and they're like, okay, you feel heard, you feel seen. Okay, now you feel good about yourself. And, as I mentioned earlier, now you're willing to do it again and again and again. And then you're demonstrating for others, like, you mentioned, little brown and black girls to see, well, wow, she's speaking out, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can do it as well. And we are starting to see them younger and younger who are speaking out, who are activists, who are understanding, that they have voices and they're using their voices. And it's such a beautiful thing to see.
And I focus on black and brown girls because those are my community. But I have also been to things. I was at one of the women's march in Ann Arbor, and I talked. And afterwards, this middle class guy came up with his two little white girls, and he said, "I wanted them to see what women are supposed to be, and that they
Mm,
reach out to do that." So, you know, I have such hope in our kids who see beyond race, beyond gender, and that we have to talk to them so they don't think that, oh, a black woman can only do this or that. It's like, oh, I need to hear her. We have great examples. I'm sure that there's little girls of all races and ethnicities who would love to be Michelle Obama, or
mm.
who might hear me talk and say, hey, I can go do that. I can stand up for against that. And it's important.
Absolutely, it's normalizing it,
Mm-hmm,
right? It's making it normal for them to see us in all aspects and not in certain boxes.
mm-hmm.
So absolutely, and that is an important, and that is why we should continue to use our platforms and our voices. So collections by Michelle Brown, uh, what is that about? Help us to understand about that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, a while back, I was doing a podcast with some people from Chicago, and in part because I had called in and they had said, you bring a different perspective and you should be a part of this. So we did that for a while. We won awards for that. It was called Can We Talk for Real? And
Mm,
I had two co-hosts. And as it was, one had to move out of the area, the other one got married, life changed. But there was this need for this conversation. So I was talking to some people. I said, I don't know how we're going to keep us doing it. And they said, you should just do it. So I was talking to someone and I was telling them about the wide variety of people I meet. And she said, you know what? When I hear you talk about this, I see it like you having lots of these little blue Tiffany boxes of wonderful people. And we should call it Collections by Michelle Brown. And I said, oh, okay. And we dove right into that. And I listened to you talk because how you said, you say, I'm going to try and do this. This has been like, I'm in my third year. I've done it every week. Of course, I started with people who I have known or work with. Um, and I talk about people who stand boldly in the crosshairs of their intersectionality and creating change. And bring them in and they talk about what they're doing, who they are, and through their example or through their lives, just by not saying, don't put me in a box, I am this person, I can do all of this. I look for people who are members of the LGBTQ community, our allies, and people who think that way. If you don't believe in equality for all, if you're not bringing something into it, then I don't have a platform for you. But again, as I often say, we are all more alike. And most of us are standing in the crosshairs of our intersectionality. I don't have a get out of jail card when I walk someplace that I can pull out and say, oh, I'm a member of the gay community, don't follow me around the store, because I'm Black. Here's my get out of jail card. I don't have that. I am a Black queer woman. I'm a mother. I'm a member of my community. Most people, if you really look at yourself, you stand in the crosshairs of your intersectionality. How you stand there is how you show up is how we create change.
I absolutely love that. Stand boldly in the crosshairs of your intersectionality. I love that. And
Mm-hmm.
as you were talking about the collections and the boxes, and I like to share how I know my guests or how we were connected. And you reached out to me. You had heard an interview. You were about to, prepare. Were preparing for an interview with Kaylin Risker, who was a previous guest speaker, and you reached out and we connected and we talked, and you shared your collection. You're like, hey, I have other resources. If you're wanting to talk to them, let me know. I'm happy to make introductions. And that's what we have to do for one another. We have to support, we have to signal boost. We have to be there for one another. We have to stand boldly in our crosshairs of our intersectionality. So I love all of that. Michelle, what would you like to tell the voiceless?
Well, yeah, I'd like to tell, you may think that you're voiceless, but just by showing up in life, if you're the one who just shows up when they say, I'm outside of my comfortable zone. If I show up and I know I'm going to be the only Black person there, sometimes in being there, that can be it. How you walk your truth, how you walk through life, the words that you say. And, and I have found, like, over time, I think a little bit more before I speak because of the power of words. But it's the power of words. It's the power of your action. How you stand up. Who might be watching and go like, hey, I could be like that. So you are not voiceless. If you are here, if you woke up this morning, you have a purpose. You have a purpose. So don't sit at home and say, I coulda, shoulda, woulda. Be out and be your purpose. Maybe your purpose is to rock your natural hair, and someone else will suddenly go like, you know what? I can do that. I should be proud of that. Maybe it's to stand up against inequality, and someone doesn't know that. Maybe it's to bring what you have. Bring your full self to that. And if it's through your voice speaking, if it's through your actions, if it's through your presence, recognize that you are not voiceless. You have a huge voice. You just have to know how to use it and amplify what you've been given.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You have a voice. You just have to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So Michelle, before we wrap up, as I mentioned, it's Pride. June is Pride Month.
Mm-hmm.
And you are a woman of color, a Black queer mom. You are an activist. You are so many other things. We are right now. Today was the memorial for George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like to say about what's going on right now?
Well, I would like to say that all Black lives matter. It hurts when I see that in this period of time, we've had a young Black man killed. We've had George murdered on television. We had a trans man killed. We had a trans woman beaten. We had a woman killed in her bed. We matter. Our Black lives matter. And it's important that we recognize everybody. Black people, we're not one size fit all. That's the beauty of us. And we can't stand for anyone to die, because if we're okay with Tony McCabe being killed as a trans man, but we're outraged by George Floyd, tomorrow another Black person will be killed. We have to stand up for us, for our community. It's time. I'm tired. We talked earlier. I'm not good. I'm not good with this. And we've had years, we've had centuries of not being good. It's time.
Michelle, I thank you so much for your voice. I thank you so much for what you're already doing, what you're doing as the host of Collections by Michelle Brown. I thank you for reaching out. I thank you for, just seeing the power in our voices, seeing the power in having conversations that lead to action. So, Michelle E. Brown, again, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.